Now we'll be analysing how each country, Chad and Bangladesh, meet certain UN sustainability goals. For the first sustainability goal of no poverty, Chad has made little to no progress, and they're not really improving that in the status quo. There were some initiatives that aimed to help the situation with improving agriculture, access to clean water, and food. They've also tried to use microloans, which have achieved some success. But for the most part, the problem of poverty still remains a huge issue in Chad and isn't really going away. The government has been really inefficient in dealing with this because of excessive bureaucracy and corruption. The NGOs have helped somewhat by reaching out to rural communities and communities that the government doesn't reach. And Chad has received some help from countries and entities like the World Bank and IMF. As for Bangladesh, they too haven't met this goal, but they're closer to meeting it, and they are making some progress towards it, but it's not really enough to meet it in a timely manner. There were similar initiatives that I mentioned before for Chad, but in some ways they did go beyond by offering more social safety net programs, such as cash transfers and food assistance. As I said earlier with Chad, there have also been problems in the government, such as corruption and excessive bureaucracy, but to a lesser degree. NGOs again did play a vital role in reaching certain communities, such as BRAC and Grameen Bank. They also helped give funding and helped aid the government in that respect. They also received some help from countries and institutions such as the World Bank, as did Chad, and the Asian Development Bank for natural disasters that might have happened and for funding their infrastructure. Now for the second goal of no hunger. Chad again has not met this goal and they still have many major challenges ahead. They're not really improving and they're not doing much to achieve that goal. So, in addition to the initiatives that we mentioned before for goal number one, they've also tried providing better seeds, training, and irrigation systems to farmers, and food assistance programs in lean seasons where citizens may not be getting as much agriculture as they need. There have been some efforts from the government, but because of excessive bureaucracy and corruption, oftentimes the help hasn't reached the right people at the right times, so it really hasn't had that much of an impact, and it's not been a long term solution. NGOs, again, they were vital in helping in the help that was received as they interacted directly with communities and they gave education as well to certain farmers and implemented projects that tried to mitigate the amount of hunger that was in Chad. Countries and organizations such as the UN have also tried to help Chad through grants and donations, but again, they've been limited because the government hasn't really utilized that too well. As for Bangladesh, they also haven't met this goal, but they're closer to it. They're moderately improving their score, but again, it's not really enough to achieve it in a timely manner. So, Bangladesh, they did implement similar policies as Chad, but they did again go beyond by promoting diversification in crops, and that sort of helped with stability and ensuring that Bangladesh wasn't over dependent on one crop in case there was failure, and it also helped with their exports and raising money. The government because of these initiatives been relatively more supportive with natural disasters and research, but again there is still corruption and bureaucracy that does lead to inefficiency. NGOs, they play a similar role in Bangladesh as with Chad in reaching certain communities and in educating people in certain methods that might reduce hunger and help with agriculture and reduce hunger. There have been countries and organizations that have helped Bangladesh in natural disasters who they've called upon and that have helped Bangladesh with agricultural needs. For the third sustainability goal of good health and well-being, Chad really hasn't met this goal either, and they are quite far away with it, and then not really making too much progress to achieving that either. The country has tried various initiatives and social services, but they've been more or less ineffective, and they haven't reached the people they've needed, which is a recurring theme with Chad. Again, this is because of ineffectiveness and corruption in the government, where they only give resources to certain populations and not to a lot of people who need it. NGOs, they try to alleviate this problem by helping the spread of resources and with education and outreach initiatives, but it really hasn't been effective, as you can see by the current state. The WHO has funded health programs and the underlying infrastructure, which bilateral aid has also helped. But again, because the government is inefficient and they haven't really used their money well, those problems still remain at large. Now, Bangladesh, they similarly haven't met this goal, but they're closer to it and they are slowly getting there. Now, Bangladesh has focused on increasing health, on increasing healthcare facilities and especially training certain individuals so they would be able to better care for the population. And this has resulted in progress and it's helped improve the system, but it has been slow. Now, the government has been somewhat effective because of these measures, but again, there is a lot of room for growth and more things that could be done. NGOs again have been instrumental in helping the government in reaching the right people and ensuring that more people are educated on health and certain ways they can stop diseases and certain risks from taking place. And once more, Bangladesh, they've received significant aid from organizations like the Asian Development Bank, as well as other states that have been around them and other MDCs. Now for the fourth sustainability goal, quality education. Chad has not met this goal with major challenges remaining, and they're not really getting there either. Chad, they've tried certain initiatives, and an example would be the education sector plan, but they fell short mostly because of inefficient government, which has been a recurring theme. So the government with excessive bureaucracy has really hindered education, and it hasn't really made it equitable in the real sense. And there's been a huge gap between who gets education in Chad and who doesn't, due to financial situations where as well as how far or which region of the country they live in, and that's really limited opportunity for certain individuals. Countries have tried to help Chad with giving resources and funding to help with infrastructure, but because the system in and of itself isn't really that great, it hasn't really helped Chad in the long run. As for Bangladesh, they are still a little bit away from this goal, but they're making really good progress in making there, and they are rapidly educating their population. Now, one specific initiative that they focused on that's really helped them is the national education policy. Now, the reason why this policy has been so great for Bangladesh is because it's emphasized equity and inclusivity. If you've looked at the four sustainability goals that we've had so far, and the reasons why certain countries haven't met them, such as Chad and Bangladesh, is because they don't reach the right people or every person. Now, with the national education policy, Bangladesh tries to mitigate that as they emphasize equity and inclusivity. So they try and reach as many people and make education available to as many people as they can, no matter what caste they might be or of their financial situation. Because of this, the government has been really helpful, and we've seen an increase in education that's been paramount. And despite problems of corruption and excessive bureaucracy, there's still been massive progress. NGOs have partnered with the government in, especially in funding areas and reaching those areas that we said earlier. And there have been donations from the World Bank and UNICEF and countries from the UK and USA that have helped with laying the underlying foundations of Bangladesh's education system, such as with the infrastructure and training.
Sustainability Goal Number 5, Gender Equality. Bangladesh has made notable progress in gender equality, mainly in education, workforce, and participation, and also political representation. More girls are enrolled in school, and women have greater access to jobs. Policies have also been introduced to address gender based violence. But challenges like wage gaps, child marriage, and discrimination are still very prominent. How did they get there? Bangladesh's progress has mainly been driven by the government's policies that promote female education, microfinance programs, and NGO led advocacy for gender rights. Legal reforms and international support have helped, but deep rooted societal norms continue to slow this advancement. Moving on to Chad. Chad ranks among the lowest in gender equality, with women facing severe barriers in education, employment, and political participation. Child marriage and gender based violence are still very common, and economic opportunities for women are very limited. How did they get there? Chad's struggle with gender equality is mainly due to cultural traditions, poverty, and weak legal protections. Some progress has been made through NGO efforts, awareness campaigns, and small scale education programs, but political instability and lack of this enforcement has slowed any change. Sustainability Goal Number 6: Clean Water and Sanitation. Bangladesh. Bangladesh has improved access to clean water and sanitation, mainly in urban areas. It reduced waterborne diseases. However, rural regions still face challenges like arsenic contamination. Progress has been driven by government programs, international aid, and again NGO efforts, with investments in water treatment, sanitation technology, and public awareness campaigns. How did they get there? Government programs, international aid, and NGO initiatives have expanded clean water access through treatment plants, low cost sanitation technologies, and hygiene awareness campaigns. Chad. Chad struggles with clean water access due to poor infrastructure, conflict, and climate related water scarcity, leading to severe health issues. How did they get there? Progress relies on international aid and again NGO efforts, including borehole drilling, water purification projects, and hygiene education, but instability and funding gaps continue to slow improvements. Sustainability Goal Number 7: Affordable and Clean Energy. Bangladesh has expanded electricity access, especially through solar energy, reducing power shortages but still relying on fossil fuels. How did they get there? Government policies, subsidies for solar energy, and rural electrification programs, along with international investments, have driven clean energy growth. Chad. Chad has one of the most lowest electricity access rates, with limited renewable energy use and high dependence on expensive fuel imports. How did they get there? Small scale solar projects and off grid solutions supported by international aid and government initiatives aim to improve energy access, but progress is slow due to financial and infrastructure constraints. Sustainability Goal 8: Decent Work and Economic Growth. For Bangladesh, its economy has grown rapidly, and it created multiple jobs in industries like textiles, but labor rights and income inequality remain concerns. Industrialization, foreign investment, and microfinance initiatives have fueled growth, while skills training has improved job opportunities, mainly for women and the youth. Chad, on the other hand, faces high unemployment and economic struggles due to reliance on oil, weak industrialization, and political instability. Efforts focus on diversifying the economy, investing in agriculture, and supporting small businesses, but instability and limited growth again hinder progress.
Sustainability goal number 9: industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Bangladesh has experienced rapid growth in industries, particularly in the clothing and technology industries, which both help boost the economy, with key projects such as the Pandama Bridge and the Dhaka Metro Rail have both improved travel accessibility, which helps improve efficiency in the economy. Digital innovations like mobile banking have expanded financial services access. However, the country still grapples with issues like industrial pollution, dependence on the textile sector, and inadequate rural infrastructure, while Chad remains to be one of the most least industrialized countries in the world, with its economy still having a major role in the agricultural sector and the oil sell and the selling of oil. Minor developments in industrialization have occurred, particularly with infrastructure, most recently with the roads and cellular networks provided by the World Bank and other global efficiencies. However, political turmoil and infrastructural deficiencies and a lack of a entrepreneurial investment force in Chad have have caused inefficiencies to help grow in the economy. And in sustainability goal number 10, which was reduce inequality, Bangladesh's poverty levels are dropping, with the country still emerging from a state of poverty, but with some social safety nets, with like things like microfinance that are relatively stable in keeping things in check. And also, women have entered the workforce substantially with the garment industry, although the country struggles with regional, rural, urban, and gender inequality. In addition, there are many inequalities due to the presence of the Rohingya refugees that are in domestic affairs. While Chad once again proves to be the one of the most inequitable countries in the world, with over 42% of the people living below the national poverty line. Chad also has some decentralization efforts due to the reduced regional inequities. However, it fails to address the ethnic disparities and gender inequalities. With limited access to the education and employment for women and other marginalized groups, equity is halted from evolving. And with sustainability goal number 11, which was sustainable cities and communities, Bangladesh has undertaken urban development in cities to help combat rapid urbanization. The Dhaka Metro Rail is in effect is an example to help ease traffic and help grow plans for smart cities. For low income populations, there are slum rehabilitations and housing efforts helping get more people get more people a home. But there's still many issues that persist. There's still streets clogged with traffic. The garbage isn't managed properly, let alone pollution. And despite ongoing construction, part of Dhaka's identity remains to be one of the most populated and polluted, congested places in the world. Chad, especially in Dejima, faces serious problems due to poor planning. This has led to an informal settlements and a lack of public services. International aid has helped with water and sanitation projects, but there's still many infrastructure needs that are still unmet. Climate change has made these urban problems worse by increasing shortages of resources and increasing the risk of displacement.
Sustainability Goal 12: Responsible Consumption and Production. Bangladesh. Let's evaluate its success. As of now, Bangladesh has yet to achieve its goal for responsible consumption and production. In its pursuit, it continues to face challenges today. It primarily struggles with production-based air pollution, which has a value of 4.9 compared to the long-term goal of 0. This indicator has been increasing over years. You might be wondering, how did the country get here? Well, Bangladesh's economy relies heavily on industrialization in the garment sector, which is a high waste and pollution producing sector. Weak enforcement of environmental regulations has exacerbated the problem. Due to recent increase in awareness, the government has introduced various policies promoting green industry and waste reduction. Even after those government policies, the score for Bangladesh has come to a stagnation or is increasing at a rate less than 50% of the required one. Let's move on to Chad and evaluate its success regarding this goal. Chad too continues to face challenges to address this goal. Its government has made efforts to reduce air pollution associated with imports and production-based air pollution. You might be wondering, how did the country get here? Chad has limited industrialization, due to which it naturally has a low waste production. Most of the waste is produced through high food and material waste, due to inefficient waste management structure and unsustainable farming practices. In recent years, production-based nitrogen waste has also increased. Due to these shortcomings, even though Chad has low production waste, its score is only moderately improving and is insufficient to attain its desired goal. Sustainability Goal 13: Climate Action. Bangladesh. Let's evaluate its success. Bangladesh has met its goal for the SDG of climate action. Its score continues to increase at less than 50% of the required rate, assuming that the score has not stagnated yet. You might be wondering how you got here. Bangladesh is one of the countries most affected by climate change. It faces severe risks from rising sea levels, cyclones, and extreme weather. To limit these vulnerabilities from climate change, the government has started building coastal embankments and disaster preparedness systems. Currently, there is information on only 2 out of the 3 indicators to evaluate whether Bangladesh has met this goal. Presently, both of these indicators have been met, but they both face stagnant or limited growth. Now let's move on to Chad. Evaluating its success. Chad has achieved its goal for the SDG of climate action. Its score has continued to go down to the target goal within the last years.
You might be wondering how Chad got here. Chad also faces major challenges from climate change. Desertification and drought have severely harmed agriculture and reduced water availability. The shrinking of Lake Chad has cut down water resources, causing food insecurity and land disputes. Right now, there is only information on 2 out of the 3 of the indicators, but both of them have seemed to hit the goal or are on track to hit the goal. Sustainability Goal 14, Life Below Water. Bangladesh. Let's evaluate success. Bangladesh continues to face major challenges in its pursuit to address the sustainability goal of life below water. You might be wondering how it got here. Bangladesh is surrounded by water from the Indian Ocean. Due to easy accessibility to the ocean and the resources within it, the water and the ecosystems within it are being exploited. Bangladesh is.
So for sustainability goal number 15, life on land, again our countries are Bangladesh and Chad. So for Bangladesh, we said that Bangladesh made some significant progress in preserving its land ecosystems through afforestation programs, wetland conservation, and stricter environmental regulations. But rapid urbanization and industrial expansion keeps like threatening the biodiversity and the natural habitats in Bangladesh. So it makes living in in that certain area and success in that area inconsistent. So policies do exist to protect the forest and wildlife in that area, but and the enforcement remains a challenge due to economic priorities and political constraints. So how did they get there? The government, along with international organizations and NGOs, has implemented reforestation projects and sustainable agriculture practices to reduce land degradation. Additionally, community-led conservation initiatives have helped protect wetlands and forests. Despite these efforts, deforestation and pollution persist due to weak enforcement of environmental laws and high demand for land in urban areas. Moving on to Chad. So Chad has significantly struggled with land degradation due to desertification, deforestation, and unsustainable farming practices. Climate change has also worsened the situation, which led to soil erosion and declining agricultural productivity. While some initiatives have been introduced to battle these issues, progress remains slow due to their limited resources and ongoing political instability. So, how did they get here? Efforts to combat desertification include afforestation programs, sustainable land management projects, and international aid focused on environmental protection. But the conflicts, or weak governance, and poverty have hindered the effective implementation of these strategies. So they have been getting external support from the United Nations and the NGOs, which play a crucial role in addressing land degradation, but long-term solutions require stronger domestic policies. So for sustainability goal number 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions for Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has made efforts to improve governance and institutional strength, but challenges like political unrest, corruption within politics and just in the government in general, and restrictions on freedom of expression persist. While electoral and judicial reforms have contributed to some stability, human rights human rights violations and political conflicts continue to hinder significant progress. So how did they get there? The government worked with international organizations and civil society to strengthen institutions and promote good governance. Reforms in the judicial system and anti-corruption measures have been introduced, but enforcement remains inconsistent still. And the political tensions and the limited press freedom is not helping, and they create obstacles to achieve. They create obstacles in achieving lasting peace and justice. Moving on to Chad, they also face severe governance challenges, including again political corruption, human rights abuses, and internal conflicts. So weak institutions and ongoing violence in that area undermine the efforts to establish a stable and just society, which makes progress towards this goal very difficult. So how did they get here? Decades of political instability, armed conflicts have weakened Chad's institutions, leaving the country dependent on international peacekeeping efforts. While a few steps have been taken in the right direction to improve the governance, such as constitutional reforms and international mediation efforts, but corruption and a lack of accountability prevent any meaningful change.
Sustainability goal number 17, partnerships for the goals. So for Bangladesh, they have successfully leveraged international partnerships to support economic growth and sustainable development. So foreign investments, trade agreements, and collaboration with NGOs have improved infrastructure, education, and climate resilience. But reliance on external funding raises concerns about long-term sustainability. So how did they get here? They engaged in global development initiatives. So they attracted foreign aid and investment through economic diplomacy. So partnerships with organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank have played a key role in addressing poverty and climate changes in that area. Despite these efforts, a few challenges remain in ensuring economic self-sufficiency and reducing dependency on international assistance. So they have to be able to do stuff by themselves. Moving on to Chad became really reliant on international aid and external partnerships to address its development challenges. So while foreign assistance provides essential support for humanitarian and economic projects, weak governance and political instability limit the effectiveness of these partnerships. So how did they get here? International organizations such as the UN, IMF, and World Bank all provided Chad with financial aid, development programs, and peacekeeping support. However, the problem is that the country's lack of strong domestic policies and economic instability hinder long-term development. So, strengthening the internal governance and expanding trade agreements could help Chad build more sustainable and effective partnerships.
Comparison questions. We will answer each question for both Bangladesh and Chad. What kind of government does the country have? Bangladesh has a parliamentary democracy. It has faced political instability in the past, including military coup and marital law. Recently, the country has had a more stable democratic process. Despite this improvement, corruption is still a big problem. It affects many sectors and slows down development efforts. Chad is a unitary state with a strong presidential system. The country struggles with security issues due to ongoing internal conflicts and regional instability. Corruption is also widespread in Chad, affecting the governance and public services. This makes it hard to achieve political and economic stability. What kind of economic system does the country have? Bangladesh has a mixed economy with important contributions from agriculture, manufacturing, and services. The country has seen steady economic growth, mainly from textile manufacturing, remittances, and a growing service industry. Chad has an economy that relies heavily on agriculture, with most people involved in subsistence, farming, and raising livestock. Recently, oil production has become a key part in Chad's economy, bringing in significant revenue, but the country still struggles to diversify its economy. What are the country's primary natural resources? Bangladesh has many natural resources, such as natural gas, farmland, timber, and coal. These resources are important for the country's economy and support key industries like agriculture, energy, and manufacturing. Chad also has various natural resources, including oil, uranium, natron, gold, limestone, sand, gravel, and salt. Oil production is the main driver of Chad's economy. Other minerals and resources could be further developed, but they are mostly not used to their full potential. What are the country's major industries and projects? Bangladesh's main industries are textiles and garments, and shipbuilding and fish processing. The textile and garment sector is vital to the economy, as mentioned before, providing a large share of exports and jobs. Other industries such as shipbuilding and ceramics have also become important in recent years, which add variety to Bangladesh's industrial landscape. Chad's key industries include oil extraction, cotton textiles, meatpacking, beer brewing, and soap manufacturing. Oil extraction is the main one, and it's essential for the economy, generating significant revenue. Traditional industries like the cotton textiles and meatpacking continue to provide local jobs and support trade. However, Chad's industrial sector is still underdeveloped, with plenty of room for growth and new opportunities. What is a typical level of education for students? Is it different for men and women? In Bangladesh, primary education is generally accessible. However, the rates of attainment in secondary and higher education remain relatively low. Significant progress has been made in closing the gender gap, leading to improved enrollment rates for girls. Although education is free up to a certain level, socioeconomic factors such as poverty and inadequate infrastructure often compromise both the quality and accessibility of education. In Chad, literacy rates are low, and these are limited opportunities for education beyond the primary level. Gender disparities are significant, with girls experiencing fewer educational opportunities due to cultural and economic barriers. Additionally, the education system faces challenges such as poor infrastructure, teacher shortages, and cultural factors that hinder access to quality education. What evidence is there for your LDC countries that they have attempted to improve their human capital? Bangladesh has made significant investments in education and vocational training programs to enhance workforce skills and improve employability. These initiatives aim to bridge the skills gap and support economic growth by preparing individuals for various industries, including textiles, technology, and manufacturing. Chad has concentrated on literacy programs and has formed partnerships with international organizations to improve educational outcomes. These efforts aim to address low literacy rates and expand access to education. However, challenges such as limited resources and inadequate infrastructure continue to hinder progress. What could they do that would be most effective? Support your assertion. Bangladesh aims to provide quality education, improve healthcare access, and build infrastructure to support economic growth. These investments seek to boost the quality of life, create jobs, and ensure long-term economic stability. Chad focuses on basic education and healthcare while working to diversify its economy and lessen its reliance on oil. It's essential to create economic opportunities beyond the oil sector for long-term stability, and improving education and healthcare is crucial for human development and reducing poverty. They would also benefit from increased world trade. These are the graphs showing what would happen from their success. The first graph is a positive consumption externality graph of education, and it displays the welfare gain that Bangladesh would gain from better education programs. On the other side, we see what would happen if Chad participated more in world trade and exported and imported more goods. We can see that the world price makes it easier for consumers and increases the consumer surplus, and is beneficial to society as a whole. What portion of your countries live in poverty? As of 2022, around 5% of Bangladesh's population lives below the international poverty line of $2.15 a day. This represents a significant reduction from previous years, highlighting the country's progress in alleviating poverty. Chad faces a more severe situation. In 2011, approximately 68% of the population lived on less than $2 per day. By 2015, this figure had dropped to about 26.5%. However, more recent data shows that the poverty rate has risen since 2015 due to economic recession and other challenges such as food inflation. As of 2023, the poverty rate in Chad stands around 35%. What are the nutrition and health issues for the poor in your LDC countries? In Bangladesh, undernutrition is a serious issue. About 28% of children under 5 are stunted, which means they're shorter than they should be for their age. Additionally, 10% of these children are wasted, meaning they weigh too little for their height. These numbers show both long-term and short-term malnutrition. Many preschool-age children also lack important vitamins and minerals, leading to conditions like anemia. These nutritional problems weaken their immune systems, making it easier for them to get infections and harder for them to learn. Furthermore, children living in urban slums face higher rates of malnutrition than the national average, highlighting the significant inequalities across the country. Chad is experiencing a serious food crisis. Over 3.4 million people are facing severe food shortages. This is due to high food prices, disrupted markets, and problems caused by climate change. Childhood malnutrition is a major issue. Many children are under 5 and stunted or wasted, which is among the highest rates in the world. This is caused by not getting enough food, poor feeding practices, high rates of sickness, lack of health care, low vaccination rates, poor hygiene, and not having clean drinking water. These challenges lead to more health problems and higher rates of illness and death, especially among vulnerable groups.
Deary me.
Are the banks in the countries publicly owned, privately owned, or both? In Bangladesh, the banking sector includes both public and private banks, with Bangladesh Bank as a central regulatory body. There are several state-owned banks such as the Sonali, Janata, and Agrani Bank, along numerous private and foreign banks. As of December 2023, there were over 160 million bank accounts, with 14.11% held by rural customers and 32.36% by women. However, around 47% of adults remain unbanked as of 2021. In Chad, the banking sector is smaller, regulated by the Regional Central Bank, BEAC. The country has 10 commercial banks, 4 of which dominate 75% of the market. Financial inclusion is very low, with only 37.89% of bank accounts per 1,000 adults in 2020, indicating significant challenges in accessing banking services. What foreign aid do your countries receive? Are any NGOs working in your countries? Since Bangladesh gained independence in 1971, it has received a lot of foreign aid. From 1972 to 2007, the United States provided about $5.6 billion, with 58% used for food aid. Recently, the European Union has increased its help, especially because of the Rohingya refugee crisis. Many international NGOs like Oxfam and BRAC, the largest non-governmental development organization, work on health, education, and disaster response. However, in fiscal year 2023, funding for NGOs in Bangladesh hit a 6-year low. This drop happened mainly because global donors are focusing on other crises, like the conflict in Ukraine. Chad is facing significant humanitarian challenges, with around 6 million people requiring assistance in 2024. The U.S. Agency for International Development has contributed $2.5 million for disaster aid, while World Bank approved $100 million to enhance social safety nets, along with an additional $20 million from the Sahel Adaptive Social Protection Program. Several international NGOs like Alima and Handicap International are working to provide health services and support victims of violence. Despite these efforts, ongoing conflicts, economic instability, and environmental issues continue to exacerbate the crisis. What infrastructure do your countries lack? In Bangladesh, rapid urbanization has caused severe road congestion and inadequate public transport, especially in Dhaka, leading to traffic delays and worsening air pollution. The healthcare system struggles with rising demand and shortage of poorly equipped, understaffed facilities. Additionally, the challenges in energy infrastructure are evident in recent disputes over power supply agreements. In Chad, infrastructure deficits are widespread. Limited paved roads leave many rural areas completely inaccessible. Particularly during the rainy season, only 11.1% of the population has access to electricity, forcing the reliance on biomass fuels. The telecommunications sector is underdeveloped, though initiatives like Starlink aim to improve connectivity. Access to clean water and sanitation remains inadequate, with only 10.1% of the population having improved sanitation facilities, worsening public health issues. What priorities do you think each country should have when it comes to infrastructure, and why? Bangladesh should diversify its export base beyond the ready-made garments, RMG, to reduce economic vulnerabilities and promote sustainable growth. Investing in infrastructure for emerging industries and strengthening the financial sector are crucial for stability and investor confidence. Addressing urban sustainability through better planning, waste management, and transportation is essential due to the rapid urbanization and climate risk. Chad should prioritize a comprehensive transportation network, including roads and railways, to enhance connectivity and trade. Investing in reliable energy sources is vital for industrial growth and living standards. Promoting good governance and enhancing regional connectivity through infrastructure projects can stimulate economic growth and stability. What is a primary source of tax revenue for the government of your choice? In Bangladesh, the main source of tax revenue is a value-added tax, which accounted for approximately 39.8% of the country's total tax revenues in 2022. The National Board of Revenue oversees tax administration and is responsible for collecting about 97% of the tax revenue, which represents around 85% of the government's total revenue. In Chad, oil revenues are primary sources of government income, making 77.5% of the country's exports and serving as a significant generator of foreign currency and tax revenue. This heavy dependence on oil revenues has rendered the Chadian economy vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices. What is the status of property rights in your countries? Are they clearly spelled in law or is it murky? In Bangladesh, property rights are protected by the Constitution, specifically Article 42, which allows citizens to acquire and transfer property, ensuring compensation for compulsory acquisition. The Transfer of Property Act of 1882 governs transactions, but challenges persist. The Vested Property Act allows government confiscation of properties from perceived enemies, impacting minority communities disproportionately. Inheritance laws influenced by religion also restricts property rights for certain groups, such as Hindu women. In Chad, the constitution states private property is sacred and can only be taken out for urgent public needs with compensation. Law 23 of the 1967 categorizes land as national or private, yet informal customary practices often dominate in rural areas. Village chiefs control land access, excluding women from ownership, creating inconsistencies between formal legal frameworks and local practices that can lead to conflicts over property rights. To what extent does income inequality exist in your countries? According to the World Bank, Bangladesh's Gini coefficient rose from 32.4% in 2016 to 33.4% in 2022, indicating increased income inequality. However, the World Economics Database cites a much higher Gini coefficient of 57.6 for 2019, highlighting the discrepancies in data collection methods or income measurement. Despite this, even lower estimates show notable income inequality. Chad's Gini coefficient was 37.4% in 2022, slightly down from 37.5% in 2018, with earlier estimates from World Economics at 53.3% for 2019. These differences in data sources show the persistent issue of significant economic income inequality in Chad. How large is the informal market in your country? In Bangladesh, the informal market is vast, with the 2022 Labor Force Survey noting about 60 million people, or 84.9% of the workforce, engaged in informal employment. This includes both registered businesses and unregistered activity, with 96.6% of employed women and 92.7% of young-aged 15 to 27-year-olds involved in the informal economy. This sector significantly contributes to the economy, accounting for about 30.2% of the GDP, or roughly $324 billion, primarily through agriculture, trade, and small-scale industries. Chad's informal economy is substantial, with 96.9% of employed individuals working informally as of 2018, including 95.2% of men and 99% of women. In 2020, it represented about 41.1% of GDP, approximately $14 billion, encompassing agriculture, trade, services, which are essential for livelihoods amid limited formal employment opportunities. To what extent are the governments in your country stable? Are there any threats to them? In August 2024, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned amid widespread protests, leading to an interim government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. This transition has been violent, resulting in over 1,000 deaths and attacks on religious minorities, particularly Hindus. The ongoing political crisis has worsened economic condition, prompting a 42-month, $4.7 billion IMF program that was initiated in January 2023. Delays in election beyond December 2024 raised concerns about instability, with the opposition of warning of unrest. Chad has been faced political instability since the death of President Idris Idris Deby in April 2021, with his son Mohammed Deby taking over. Ongoing internal opposition and security challenges from rebel groups like FACT persist. The withdrawal of Niger from the multinational Joint Task Force (MNJTF) complicates security efforts, as Chad grapples with high poverty levels, with 62% of its population living in extreme poverty, making it vulnerable to conflict and climate issues. Why is corruption an economic problem? Corruption in Bangladesh has led to the misallocation of public resources, diverting funds from vital sectors like health and education, which hampers human development and quality of public services. A significant example is the Baru Pukuria coal scam of 2018, where officials misappropriated 1.4 million tons of coal, causing financial losses in the power sector. The banking sector also faces embezzlement allegations involving high-ranking officials such as former Land Minister Chowdhury, who is accused of establishing a global property empire with illicit gains. In Chad, corruption is prevalent at all government levels, with nepotism and cronyism creating barriers to investment and economic growth. The petroleum sector, despite its revenue potential, has suffered from mismanagement and embezzlement, especially under former President Idris Deby's regime, which reportedly diverted oil revenues away from public welfare. Chad only scored 21 out of 100 on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index in 2024, reflecting its severe governance issues and erosion of public trust.
Now that we've finished collecting all the data, let's go through the overarching questions. Question 1. If you could advise the US government to give foreign aid to one country, which country would you select and why? Our answer is Chad. Chad faces more severe economic issues, with a GDP of about $13.15 billion and only $35.5 million in US aid, which is mainly supplied for food assistance. Increasing support for Chad could help address urgent needs and promote stability in the region. Compared to Bangladesh, the impact of the foreign aid will be much greater because Chad faces more vulnerabilities from rapid desertification and land degradation, has limited infrastructure and capacity, and lacks economic stability, due to which it is difficult to independently address sustainability issues. Question 2. What is one area that each country needs to focus on the most in order to have economic growth and development? Why did you pick that area? Bangladesh. Bangladesh has poor transportations, traffic congestion, and unreliable energy supply limit its potential for further industrial expansion and foreign investment. Improving infrastructure can enhance supply chain efficiency and attract more investors. Chad. Chad faces 7 more severe infrastructure deficits, with port roads limiting access to electricity and weak digital connectivity. Improving infrastructure would reduce transportation costs, improve market access for businesses, and boost regional trade. Finally, over the next 50 years, which country do you predict will grow the most economically? Why do you believe this is true? We picked Bangladesh. Over the next 50 years, Bangladesh is likely to grow its economy more than Chad. Bangladesh has a varied economy, with a strong focus on manufacturing, especially textiles and garments. The country is investing in educational and vocational training, and its infrastructure is also improving. These elements help Bangladesh develop steadily. Recent political stability and efforts to improve workforce skills also boost its long-term growth potential.